Risk management is one of the key components that our CXCX solution solves for. The regulators globally are looking at various elements within customer conversations. One of them is in Australia, RG271, and complaint risk or expressions of dissatisfaction that may eventuate in a complaint. When we analyze the calls, we've built 3 different models for the same use case. One is looking historically, was this a complaint call? What is the complaint risk from this particular call? Or what expressions of dissatisfaction were expressed throughout a phone call? From a management perspective, our clients like to understand where the complaint risk or expressions of dissatisfaction are occurring within the business. As you can see here, the process shows many more instances of complaint risk than, for example, technical support, which they've worked a lot on to actually reduce customer frustration. On the right, we drill down. We actually go down to the next layer of detail for complaint risk, and this allows clients to really drill into the components of their business to understand where and why expressions of dissatisfaction or complaints are occurring. How we operationalize this is very important. For example, most financial institutions have an internal team that manage complaints, either with customers or managing the ombudsman to resolve complaints. The way this is operationalized is we score 100% of the calls for complaint risk, and then we send that file to the institution. They dedupe that for complaints that have already been identified by agents in the contact center. However, what we see is typically 20 to 30% of calls could have complaints that the agent has not identified. These are then sent to the internal dispute resolution team, and they proactively contact the customers before the complaint risk becomes a complaint. This reduces the effort internally at the institution to manage future complaints and also reduces cost, most importantly, due to the fees payable to ombudsman for managing a complaint process. Another key element that regulators want financial institutions and progressively other organizations like telcos, utilities, and in the future, potentially all businesses, is to look for other aspects within a customer conversation that may show risk. And a good example is Hardship. Again, we've built 2 listeners, AI models for Hardship. One is this call a hardship call? Historical view. And the other is a predictive model on will this customer, based on what they say and how they say it, go into hardship. What this allows the institution to do is to proactively speak to customers and actually understand if they are going into hardship and to proactively manage the risk of hardship before it eventuates. Customer vulnerability is one of the key aspects looked at by regulators and governments. What CXCX has done is taken the definitions of customer vulnerability and used those definitions to tag calls for our supervised machine learning approach. In this example, one can see the vulnerable customer risk at 0.7%. And what this allows the institution to do is to take that less than 1% of calls, dedupe those against ones they already know, and then proactively contact those customers to have a conversation with them, typically within a advocacy group within the organization, to actually proactively manage any vulnerability or other elements that show that a customer may be showing traits on a phone call that the regulators want institutions to detect and proactively manage.
Privacy is another key element that particularly financial institutions like to measure, and this is your typical share of wallet conversation that an agent has with a customer when they phone into a call center. And there are a number of business rules that are associated with ID&V. So typically, as many people know, you'll phone in and they'll ask your name, they'll ask your date of birth, where you live, and so forth. But often they have to ask 2 or 3 other questions. This particular graph here is just showing where ID&V has been missed or not well managed by an agent. What we found is using traditional speech methods in terms of measuring ID&V is very complex, particularly when you're using just word spotting and key spotting methods. So using our supervised machine learning methods, we are able to apply some business rules. Apart from modeling and scoring the calls, we can also apply business rules, say this phrase has to be said within the first minute and a half or 2 minutes of a phone call to ensure that we capture it there. Because often in a phone conversation, if you're using query modeling, someone could repeat your name 3 or 4 times during a phone call, and that will often result in the machine picking up, yes, I've said Rob Woodhoft in the phone call 3 or 4 times, but you don't know if that was in context with the ID&V process.